Hi, my name is Clinton Erling, and I'm the president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The Chamber's Business Review is an informative weekly television magazine of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We will showcase the activities of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, feature interviews of prominent business personalities, and broadcast our popular training seminars for the entire country's benefit. So please sit back and enjoy while we indulge your attention over the next half an hour.
It's my pleasure, it's my honor to introduce the youngest president that this chamber has had in its 124 years since it exists. The youngest president, Mr. Clinton Erling.
Very good evening, and a hearty welcome to the Chamber's signature event of the year, which is our annual awards and Gala celebration. It is awesome to be in the company of such a remarkable group of people here this evening. Let me pause to acknowledge the presence of the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh. It is indeed an honor to be in your company here this evening as we gather to honor the best in business over the past year. Tonight, we also pay homage to an individual who over her lifetime has made a significant impact and contribution to the business sector here in Guyana. We also give acknowledgement to the Public Service Agency and also to the media entity that have mostly facilitated and offered coverage, respectively, of the Chamber's work in 2013. This year, we do something different from our dinners in the past, and we honor our past presidents from the past 4 decades who are still with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry heads into its 125th year of existence, I have the distinct honor to say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we drink from wells of opportunities that we ourselves did not create. It is these gentlemen who we are honoring this evening. They're the ones who paved the way for the current level of success and prominence that the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry is currently enjoying. Tonight's conferrals give thanks and appreciation to their sincere efforts of service to the Chamber directly and by extension to the country as a whole. Tonight, I want to assure all gathered here that the state of the Georgetown Chamber has never been stronger and more robust. Today, the GCCI is a highly recognizable, respected, and vocal, nonpartisan champion of the interests of Guyana's private sector and our nation as a whole. The Chamber seems to be everywhere these days. Hardly a day goes by when we're not featured in the press one way or the other. And speaking of the media, who could forget earlier this year the coverage of the black eye and the licking that I got from a man 40 years my senior for the leadership of the Private Sector Commission. I don't know if Mr. Webster's here this evening, but Mr. Webster's doing a fantastic job as the chairman of the Private Sector Commission. Even globally, our presence is felt through our many publications, such as the Business Guyana magazine, which is our premier investment magazine, the Business Directory, our Competitiveness Manifesto, and a very modern and up-to-date website. We also have a social media presence on Facebook, YouTube, and all these are very current and up-to-date. On television, we're also on television because we believe that we need to reach some of our programs, need to reach the length and breadth of this country. So we have a weekly television program on NCN called the Weekly Business Review. where we broadcast some of those training seminars that we conduct on a regular basis. And we also feature interviews of prominent individuals and professionals on various issues affecting and relating to private sector development in Guyana. Our seminars and events continue to attract large number of audiences, and we receive almost daily many requests from public, private, and international organizations to collaborate with the Chamber of Commerce on various events and initiatives. Almost every day I'm in a meeting with someone who wants to collaborate with the Georgetown Chamber to host an event that benefits our country as a whole. Financially, the Chamber is one of the most, if not the most, self-sustainable civil society organization in the country. Due to the support of our members and initiatives of our various committees, the Chamber has been able to achieve record levels of income over the past few years. And last year, we had the highest levels of revenues for the Chamber. And this year, I think we've topped our record last year, thus far, with over $11 million in surplus over last year. So this year is shaping up definitely to be the best year on record for the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. To that, I'll ask you to please join me to give a round of applause for that achievement. This success has allowed the Chamber to be a staunch, nonpartisan advocate in favor of initiatives that enhances our country's profile, competitiveness, and economic and social environment. This, I promise you, even as I demit office at the Chamber in about 3 months' time, I promise you this will continue as we go forward. Guests here this evening, I know many of you are very cynical about the future of our nation based on the current state of affairs. But as overcast as it gets, we must never lose sight of our national motto, which is one people, one nation, one destiny. In order to achieve our individual interests, we have to ensure that it requires, or we have to take into consideration that it requires collective action to do so. We are all caught in an inescapable web of mutuality tied in a single thread of destiny. That's a quote from the US civil rights leader Martin Luther King. And what he's saying is basically that the actions of one affects all. And tonight, I call on every one of us here tonight to recommit to the conviction of our national motto and to work collectively to move our country forward to continued prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not be verbose or prolix since we have a very packed program here this evening. However, I just want to offer my congratulations to all the awardees tonight. And I wish everyone here best wishes for a cheerful, festive, and heartwarming holiday season. And just make sure, all you entrepreneurs and company CEOs, just make sure you send my invitation to some of those splendid parties and cocktails that you'll be hosting over the holidays. God bless, good evening, and thank you very much.
Our featured speaker tonight is Dr. Justin Ram. Justin is a Trini. He lives in Barbados because he is the Director of Economics at the Caribbean Development Bank. And you will notice the Chamber, exercising their usual shrewdness, have invited a banker to address us. Not an ordinary banker, but the Caribbean Development Bank. Justin's specialization, or specializations, are in energy, natural resource and environment economics, transport economics, development economics, macroeconomics, and labor market economics. No wonder he works at the Caribbean Development Bank. And Justin has previously worked as a senior global economist with Worley Parsons, UK. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Justin. As an economist with the United Kingdom Government Department for Transport, and as a supervisory economist with the Greater London Authority.
Good evening, all. I feel honored to be able to share in your annual dinner and award ceremony, especially as you mark your 124th year of operation. Congratulations on reaching this historic milestone. In the last 124 years, this organization would have had a front seat as a particularly eventful period in Guyana's social, political, and economic history has unfolded. It is my hope that going forward, you, the business sector, will continue to play an important role in Guyana's development, ideally from the driver's seat. Let me just go back a little bit to yesterday. Yesterday, I was reminded of how times are changing. The driver sent to collect me from the airport was in fact expecting a much more elderly person, given the incorrect photograph he had of me. It was in fact a photograph of the Premier of Anguilla. We both had a very good laugh. However, it brought home the point that the world is evolving and changing rapidly. And from what I can see, Guyana is certainly participating in that evolution, together with its youthful population and extreme optimism. This evening, I will share with you my perspective on Guyana's past and future development as I seek to answer a few key questions. Where has Guyana come from? Where is the country going? How has the Caribbean Development Bank, the CDB, helped? And what do we intend to do going forward? I will conclude with some ideas as to the way forward for Guyana. So yes, Chair, you were right. You have a good idea of what I was going to speak on. So where has Guyana come from? Guyana has had a particularly challenging economic, social, and political history. The extended period of inward-looking policies that started in the early 1970s, exacerbated by a series of external shocks, culminated in a socio-economic crisis by the mid-1980s. Mass immigration ensued as real gross domestic product declined by a cumulative 26% during the period 1980 to 1989, and the poverty level peaked at 65% in 1988. The Economic Recovery Program, introduced in 1989, helped to make progress in addressing these issues. The ERP sought to restore economic growth and reduce internal and external imbalances by 1, liberalizing exchange controls, adopting a floating exchange rate, lifting import and price controls, implementing revenue-raising measures and expenditure cuts, encouraging private investment through incentives, streamlining procedures and reversal of the previous policy of nationalization, and eliminating substantial payments arrears to foreign creditors, the latter with support from the multilaterals, including the CDB. However, despite the implementation of the ERP, Guyana's economy remained weak in the 1990s through the first half of the 2000s. Low productivity was reflected in falling income and an inability to boost exports sufficiently to reduce external imbalances. The debt overhang, outward migration, and infrastructure gap, as well as enduring social tensions and political challenges, also remained significant impediments to stronger economic performance. But Guyana has turned a corner. A robust and sustained reform agenda as encapsulated in your poverty reduction strategy papers, have certainly helped to reverse economic stagnation and enhance most of your development indicators, including per capita incomes and poverty levels. Notably, public financial management reforms adopted from around 2003 have helped to improve policy making. Also, structural reforms have been implemented geared at modernizing traditional industries, as well as promoting small business development and private investments. For example, the Investment Act of 2004 provided the overarching regulatory and legislative framework for the protection of private investments in Guyana. The Small Business Act of 2004 provided incentive regimes and support programs for small businesses. And the National Competitiveness Strategy, drafted in 2006, was aimed at enhancing Guyana's competitiveness in terms of reforms to institutions and initiation of policies, projects, and programs. Guyana has therefore emerged from years of economic decline and stagnation with improved macroeconomic fundamentals. Indeed, Guyana's impressive real GDP growth rates have averaged 4.5% during the period 2006 to 2012 and have outperformed several of its Caribbean counterparts. Implementation of these reforms has been rewarded with substantial debt relief under the Highly Indebted Poor Country Initiative, the HIPIC, Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative, the MDRI, and the Paris Club arrangements, which has led to a substantial reduction in debt ratios. By 2007, the external debt to GDP ratio was estimated at 40%, compared with a high of just over 600% in 1989, while the total debt to GDP ratio had fallen to the 60% international benchmark. Improved economic performance and debt relief have freed up resources for increased social spending, and this investment has begun to pay off. Poverty levels were down from 65% in 1988 to 38% in 1999, and extreme poverty down to 18.6% in 2006 from 29% in 1992. Oops. I hope that phone doesn't ring. I would have to answer it.
Let's see if you can balance it back up here.
Okay.
Great.
Substantial progress has been made toward the MDGs, particularly in the areas of education, gender, and environment. And Guyana's HDI has risen drastically since 1980, with the country moving from in the low 1980s and 1990s to a medium HDI in the 2000s. So where is the country going? The reforms implemented to date have been relatively successful. The macroeconomic outlook is quite optimistic. Investment, buttressed by key policy initiatives, is set to remain the key growth driver. And there is a high likelihood that Guyana will achieve the MDGs by 2015, the Millennium Development Goals, in education, gender, and environment. But the country still faces development challenges. Inadequate infrastructure, high vulnerability to natural disasters and climate change, high poverty levels and other social challenges, and economic concentration and constraints to private sector development. A new wave of reforms is therefore being ushered in to consolidate and augment past progress within the context of the country's third generation PRSP, as well as the innovative low-carbon development strategy. Poverty reduction and sustainable development are the main objectives of the PRSP and the LCDS, respectively. Both these strategies seek to guide Guyana's development over the 2011 to 2015 period through four main areas of focus: infrastructure development, social and human capital development, strengthening of governance and institutions, and economic diversification and private sector development. Let me just touch a bit on how the Caribbean Development Bank has helped and what we intend to do going forward. CDB's past strategy in Guyana has focused on strengthening social and economic infrastructure, promoting private sector development, and building capacity and strengthening institutions in critical sectors. Notably, CDB has contributed to infrastructure development in terms of roads, docks, markets, and sea defenses, as well as capacity building in the area of technical and vocational education and training, otherwise known as TVET, under this strategy. In addition, the occurrence of natural disasters has led to the approval of previously unidentified capital projects for disaster management. The bank has also supported Guyana's development thrust through the application of concessional lending terms in financing these capital projects. The Caribbean Aid for Trade and Regional Integration Trust Fund, the CART Fund, has also provided a key modality for financing private sector development in the area of industry and trade. Likewise, CDB has implemented various capacity building initiatives for small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs, through its Caribbean Technological Consultancy Services, the CTCS network. There has also been a significant focus on poverty reduction through the operation of the bank's Basic Need Trust Fund, the BNTF, which focus on community projects that provide basic social and economic infrastructure and capacity building. Interventions under CART Fund, CTCS, and BNTF are all grant financed. The bank's strategy for Guyana for the 2013 to 2017 period, approved in March of 2013, maintains the focus on concessional financing for infrastructure development and grant finance BNTF and CTCS operations, but also seeks to address the country's environmental, disaster risk management, and climate finance needs. CDB also aims to restructure its relationship with the private sector in Guyana in a creative way, in line with the bank's evolving private sector thrust. So what's the way forward for Guyana? All of the areas highlighted in the government's and CDB's strategies are critical to Guyana's future development. Closing the infrastructure gap, building capacity, and strengthening institutions have received a lot of attention from the government and CDB, as well as other development partners in recent years. While significant progress has been made in relation to these areas that enhance competitiveness and facilitate private sector development, there exists a need to build on these efforts. In this regard, there have been a number of specific constraints identified by private sector stakeholders, and these include restricted access to and high cost of credit for the retooling of manufacturing plants, the absence of research and development and training facilities for the manufacturing sector, the acute scarcity of managerial capacity and skilled labor due to migration, the lengthy bureaucratic processes associated with regulatory approvals for private sector, high cost and unreliable power supply, which has led to most of the larger enterprises to invest in their own electricity generating facilities, high taxes on production, trade taxes added to corporate taxes, and inefficient trade and logistics and inadequate port facilities, which contribute to high transaction costs. Several of these issues are highlighted in the World Bank's Doing Business report for 2013, which unfortunately ranked Guyana 115th out of 189 countries overall for the ease of doing business. Moreover, the 2013 to 2014 Global Competitiveness Report ranked Guyana 102nd out of 148 countries in respect of international competitiveness. The results of these and other diagnostic and benchmarking exercises suggest that the reform and policy agenda needs to continue apace. CDB is already responding to some of these issues highlighted through the CTCS and TVET development, for example, but there is scope for CDB to support private sector development in other ways. New and innovative initiatives in the area of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate finance are coming on stream, and there is already a fund that can be used for support to the private sector to ensure their readiness for the CARICOM single market and economy and implementation of the CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement. Improving Guyana's competitiveness position will require continued efforts at improving the basic factors required for such competitiveness, including continued improvements in infrastructure, institutions, and basic education and health. The private sector should therefore also take the lead in ensuring that Guyana's vulnerability to natural events is reduced and the economic policies being pursued bring lasting and sustainable benefits to all who are willing to work diligently for it. This is particularly important in economies like Guyana's that are heavily dependent on agriculture and natural resource extraction. Let me reiterate this point to you, that properly measured economic growth is the return on the asset base of any economy. I repeat, properly measured economic growth is the return on the asset base or capital of the economy. Thus, economic growth is rarely a function of the quality and stock of assets as well as productivity of the economy. Therefore, as assets are extracted and depleted, you, the private sector, must ensure that sufficient investment is made in other types of assets, such as human capital, plant and machinery, telecommunications, and infrastructure, since these will be the assets that help support growth in the future. Any good business person knows that the maintenance of assets ensures a sustainable operation. The economy must also be heavily reinvested in to ensure sustainable economic growth in the future. Economic history teaches us that business cycles exist. The pendulum swings, the economic googlies, the bouncers, the yorkers will come. But we can be prepared by practicing in the batting nets of economic investment and fixing the economic and social roof while the sun is shining. Opening trade links with other regions of the world and deepening links within CARICOM will also foster growth now and in the future and improve productivity as you seek new markets for your goods and services. Once more, the private sector must be the lead advocates for investment now to achieve continued and future prosperity. I therefore implore you to save and invest for the future, since this will sustain higher consumption now and for future generations. Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the USA, once said, "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." So diligence and preparation are integral for future prosperity. So, in closing, the road ahead is full of opportunity and challenges. There are challenges. However, I do know that they are not insurmountable if Guyana stays the course. Every time I see Shivnarang Chandrapal bat, I am reminded of this. In my humble opinion, he is one of the greatest batsmen Guyana and the world has ever produced. And should I say, he stays the course. His constancy of purpose should therefore be our guiding light. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, let me reiterate just how delighted I am to have had this opportunity to participate in this evening's proceedings. I have enjoyed sharing with you my thoughts on Guyana's past and future development path, and the respective roles of government, the private sector, and CDB, as well as other development partners. I invite you, the business sector, to also share your vision and join with CDB and other stakeholders in working toward a harmonious and prosperous future for all in Guyana. Thank you.